Welcome to the first EXALT event of 2025, the first EXALT Dialogues. You know, the future and continuation of the EXALT Dialogues is up for debate, but today we have a lovely event. And again, this is nothing but a big thanks to the Global Extractivisms and Alternatives to It initiative based at the University of Helsinki. And EXALT Dialogues, if people don't know, is a kind of branch event out of the general EXALT initiative to more or less have the deep and fun academic discussions that we're often deprived of in academia, which is very strange. And really what EXALT Dialogues does is really presents a public space online to actually organize various different events about topics that are burning and that we want to talk about at EXALT. So today we have a lovely one. We are getting into digital extractivism. This is a fun, heavy, also for Eduardo Godinez, a contentious topic about whether we call things digital extractivism. So I am extremely excited today to present two new awesome people who have not been on the show before and who will be, I think if I'm not mistaken, presenting a research project they've been working on with a larger team as well behind them on digital extractivism. So today we are going to hear about this we've got here Thea Panyan, and they're from I'm going to say it, Lutz University and in the Department of Social Science, and a part of the research group Economy, Technology, and Society there, who has been a part of this project, and we'll talk about this. And also from the same group, we have Edmilson Parana, who is also at the same university, part of the project, same research group, and they're going to take us for a ride into what we should be thinking about when we talk about digital technologies and the extractivisms related to them. So without further ado, who is up first?
Thank you so much for the introductions, Sander. I will go first, and then my supervisor will go later. I would like to maybe mention briefly in the beginning that we are not exactly talking about digital extractivism, although it's something that we will touch on. To be more precise, we are talking about the political economy of green digital transition and the work that we have been doing around it. I hope it's okay to make that note, and I will share the screen in a moment. Can you see the slides?
Yep. We
Yes,
see them,
but
they're not
we're seeing this. Yeah, we're seeing the speaker
Okay, sorry.
view.
Okay. I'm sorry. Let me see what I should do about it then. What should I do about this? Let me think. Let me try to stop sharing and share again.
Presentation mode button somewhere.
Yeah, I think
Right.
if you go into the share, I think it can pop up and show the different ones. Then if you
Yes,
click on the one that's just
I will share again now. Yes, what about now?
Perfect.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again for all the participants for joining us today. And I am Thea Yanpan. I'm a junior researcher at Lutz University, as Sander just introduced. And today I am here to talk about our work related to the green digital economy. To start with, I would like to give a bit more introduction to our research group, because we are a rather new research group, which consists of me, my supervisor, Edmilson Parana, and a postdoc, Rodrigo. So we work on the socio-technical and economic and political impact of cutting-edge technologies, and with perspectives from the global south. The topics that we cover in the research group are digital economy, finance and technology, AI and society, and specifically for today, that's relevant, political economy of the green digital transition. And this is what we'll be talking about today. So to start the research agenda, why would it be necessary to bring forth a research agenda called the political economy of the green digital transition? So we have identified that, you know, in our current society, we have two important characteristics. One is that we're facing a global ecological breakdown. 6 out of the 9 planetary boundaries have been crossed. Global temperature rise has exceeded 1.5 Celsius degrees already in 2023, and we are on the way to exceeding 2 degrees. And two, we are experiencing rapid digitalization in all aspects of daily life. Industries are transforming by integrating AI and robotics and all kinds of digital technologies into their production. Also, work and labor are being transformed and redefined through these socioeconomic and technological transformations. And at the same time, green digital transition is being advertised by many governments as the silver bullet in the policy discourse. The green transition is to fix the ecological breakdown, specifically through using digital technology and energy systems to improve energy efficiency. And digital transition is sought to drive economic growth, specifically by improving productivity and creating new markets and industries. So these solutions are also called the twin transition, and they have been seen as pivotal in many strategies in different countries. Specifically in the EU context, we know about the European Green Deal, the Europe's digital decade, etc. And with these discourse and policies ongoing, we think that these solutions offered by the twin transition rely on an optimistic narrative that digital technologies will unilaterally enable a green future with continuous economic growth. And this represents a techno-utopia that we think is unsuited to address the real ecological crisis and the associated socioeconomic inequalities, as well as rising geopolitical tensions. So, looking into the existing literature, we found that the literature that is critical of the twin transition has focused on the rebound effects of energy technologies, deepened systemic and individual vulnerabilities and efficiencies, and further concentration of centralized control, with the potential benefits accruing to a narrow set of privileged actors who set the pace and scale of low carbon transitions to maximize their self-interest rather than public gain. So we have identified that there are research gaps. And there is a lack of a global perspective of the socioeconomic transformations brought by digitalization. And second, there's a lack of a macro political economy analysis of digitalization. And lastly, there is a lack of an overall diagnosis of digital aspects and its potential negative impacts in the green digital transition. So with these gaps identified, we propose a research agenda for the political economy of the green digital transition. And specifically, we are asking these questions. What are the socioeconomic structural aspects of the digitalization process? What are the crucial geopolitical aspects of the digitalization process, and how do they affect attempts at a green transition in different parts of the globe? And third, how do the new features of the relationship between capital and labor in a digitalized context impact the twin transition? So with this agenda, we have had a couple of initiatives to begin with, and to bring people together, scholars together. Together, we organized an international summer school and workshop last summer in June, And then currently, a special issue is being developed with the journal Globalizations. And the special issue offers a comprehensive critique of the convergence between digitalization and environmental sustainability. And it will cover 4 themes: the role of big tech in the green transition, geopolitical dimensions of digitalization, particularly AI, critical evaluations of green digital public policies, and strategic aspects of the twin transition. So altogether, the special issue contributors will examine the intricate dynamics of these 4 domains and explore how political decisions, corporate actors, and market forces shape the trajectory of sustainability goals in digital age. And in addition to the special issue, we have published 2 policy papers. The first one, policy recommendations on the green digital transition, will be what I'm going to present more in detail, which is an effort from our research group. And then the second paper, Reclaiming Digital Sovereignty, is led by Associate Professor Edmilson Paraná and his colleagues from the Democratic and Ecological Digital Sovereignty Coalition, and he will present this during his presentation. So specifically for this policy recommendation paper, we published, there are 5 policy areas that we covered, and they are AI's footprint, data rights, big tech, infrastructure, and planning. In the following, I will talk about some context related to each theme, and then the corresponding recommendations that we offer from the work of the scholars that we engaged with over the summer school and workshop. So first, with AI's footprint and data rights, to summarize, the problem is that the production of AI engenders significant natural and human footprints, and its implementation in the workplace poses risks to workers' subjectivities. Popular discourses around AI focusing on cloud and automation not only conceals environmental costs induced by the hardwares involved in AI production, but also misrecognizes that labor and data work that is vital to every process of producing AI. The environmental footprints takes form of CO2 emissions from data centers and electricity and water used in various devices, as well as increasing demands for rare minerals in the quest for low emission energy. Whereas the human footprint is evident in the low added value tasks involved in the labor process of AI development, which is data generation, data annotation, modeling, and verification. And these tasks can pose psychosocial risks to data workers who are predominantly located in the Global South. On the other hand, the integration of AI as autonomous machine in workplaces is increasingly common. Workers' rights to subject is at stake as workers become data subjects who feed data in the process of data protection and face various risks. From the legality point of view, the universal assumptions in data rights fail to recognize multiplicity of subjective social relations of inequality, and that different subjects have unequal access to equality. The existing jurisdictions on data protection prioritizes consumers over others' data subjects' data rights. So here, the policy recommendations are broadly the following. Broaden the field of AI ethics to explicitly consider the social costs of AI production for data workers. Use due diligence legislation to map, report, and monitor environmental and social conditions in the global supply chains of lead firms from the Global North to the Global South. Require union worker involvement at all stages of crafting and implementing data protection in the workplace. Introduce and reinforce co-determination in labor law in all EU member states with the priority of collective governance. And lastly, business should compile certification and codes of conduct regarding the use of AI technologies that collect workers' personal data in workplaces. These are general policy guidelines that I will not go into detail, but we can discuss further if you have specific questions later on during the Q&A. And related to big tech, we see that the problem is big tech companies have had a significant influence over the digital economy, also in society, politics, and increasingly also extending their reach into energy transition. So big tech operates as intellectual monopolies and cloud hegemons. They plan strategically from internal R&D to the whole knowledge and innovation network to monopolize data and AI knowledge, to control open source communities and rising AI startups, and to subordinate the AI value chain and other leading corporations under themselves by the means of dominating the majority of the market share for cloud services. The monopolizing and hegemonic power of big tech also set high stakes for media in the age of platformatization and micromedia, with increasing convergence between big tech and right-wing politics. The immense unregulated market and political power big tech casts is posing threats to the Western democratic systems. So with this, the policy guidelines are to enact antitrust policies and regulations to control network power, tax big tech and redirect funds to develop public digital infrastructure oriented to the public good, promote democratic, social, and economic planning, and establish new institutions that can build solidarity by integrating data, knowledge, and value. And four, build alternative media platforms detached from big tech, serving the interest of the people. Okay, so with infrastructure, we see that the problem is infrastructures are crucial to the development of the green and digital transition, but they are controlled by intellectual monopolies. Generally speaking, infrastructure generates benefits for firms and actors beyond its creators since it is widely available. And this is one of the reasons why infrastructures are generally provided by the state or through public-private partnerships. Today, infrastructures serve as the foundation for the twin transition, and we're seeing that big tech are the main actors in building and gatekeeping these digital and physical infrastructures. And in fact, they own and control the access of these infrastructures. And their ownerships and control also mean that these knowledge infrastructures prioritize a growth-oriented paradigm rather than alternatives such as a post-growth paradigm or a degrowth paradigm. And lastly, financial systems nowadays also operate with AI as a crucial infrastructure, but they operate with uncoordinated and opaque AI technologies in competitive economic settings. And this has created more economic risks rather than predictability in the financial markets. So in relation to this, the policy recommendations are to fund research and development in innovative infrastructure and technologies that challenge traditional growth models. Two, to support initiatives such as public conscientization campaigns that raise awareness about the socio-political impacts of infrastructure development. Three, to promote informed citizen participation and encourage social movements to incorporate the importance of sustainable and democratic digital infrastructure in their agendas. Fourth, to support the development of alternative knowledge infrastructures that promote social justice, considering their implications in terms of sustainability. And lastly, to implement robust state and social democratic regulations to ensure that critical infrastructures are developed and maintained in a manner that prioritizes the public good, transparency, and equitable access. The last area is planning. The problem we see is that market-oriented approaches to the green digital transition, which assumes that capital and the environment mutually benefit, cannot fundamentally address environmental crisis. The market and profit-oriented approach tends to generate higher environmental pressure through increasing total energy demand and can potentially hinder any technological transition whose primary goals are not related to producing economic value. So it is important to develop technical alternatives to change the perspective on the green digital transition. Instead of relying on green digital technologies operating under the market's logic, the green technologies should focus on making production more efficient in using materials and energy, while the digital technologies should leverage advanced systems for decentralized planning based on actual needs. Today's digital technologies have the capabilities in performing ecological accounting for real-time assessment of the environmental footprint of economic production. What is needed is to nationalize the investment into green digital technologies in order to organize economic dynamics from an ecological perspective. And the policy recommendations for planning are to promote and fund local and regional nonprofit-based or market-oriented experiences to address both green and digital transitions. 2, to implement real-time ecological accounting systems. 3, to regulate corporate practice and enhancement of public services to build an emancipated demand. And 4th, to promote democratic public planning of production and distribution as the foundation for a sustainable green digital transition. So that's my part for today, and Ed will present later. Look forward to the questions and discussions later.
All right, excellent. Well done. Great PowerPoint, important messages. This is excellent stuff. Loving it. And really, truly important to actually really focus on these aspects of AI and really the way that it's ultimately plundering the public sector and putting a lot of people and environments at risk. So thank you so much, and let's move on and go further into this project. Edmilson, you're up.
Yeah, I am. I guess you're seeing my screen, right? You can use my shared presentation. Okay, so, and they can see me and hear me well, I suppose, also?
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good.
so then here I go. All right, so thank you all for being here today, regardless of what part of the globe you are and what time is there. So thank you so much for making to it. Edmilson Paraná, I'm associate professor in the Department of Social Science here at Lund University in Finland. Thea is part of the group, as she said, and we are, well, advancing this agenda. But the whole idea for our discussion today is mostly to present what we are doing and to gather your interaction around it regarding these overall ideas and the initiatives and projects we've been developing so far. And I'm specifically, I'll try to present in the minutes I have an overview of this document we recently launched with the contribution of more than 100 intellectuals, academics, activists, policymakers around the world. And it was led by me and my colleagues that you see down here in the screen, my Cecilia Recap from UCL, Cedric Duran from Geneva, University of Geneva, Paolo Garbaldo from Complutense Madrid, and Paris Marx, that some of you may have heard of, may know, that the host of this great podcast called Tech Won't Save Us beyond other communication initiatives that are really great. And we call it Reclaiming Digital Sovereignty, a roadmap to build a digital stack for the people and the planet, pretty much on the spirit of what Thea just presented as the overall problems, answering or trying to at least talk to the problems and the overall ideas that was just outlined by Thea, and coming out of these events and debates we are doing with these great people so far. So as he was saying, I mean, this is part of a conversation, a bigger conversation with these great minds of great colleagues of ours that were together in these events we did in Lappeenranta here in Finland last year. And some of them are also called lead authors of this document. But we, of course, are gathering also, as Thea presented, gathering and building upon ideas of many of them and others that are also not included here in this lineup of the event. By the way, this is just an image of the lineup of the event and people that were giving us talks and written contributions that are also part of this special issue on the political economy of green digital transition we are organizing. But I'm saying this because it gives an overall context why and how these documents appeared, and particularly the second one I'm presenting now, this Reclaiming Digital Sovereignty. It all started in academia, so to speak, and we are now trying to move beyond in this kind of productive dialogues between academia and activism and other, let's say, worlds. And this started with these people in these events, but also after that, as we were discussing these issues at the summer school and this workshop that we did last June with these amazing colleagues, and we had also presentations from students, PhD researchers from all over the world in this summer school. Lots of Latin Americans, as you might see. This is somewhat relating back to Latin American debates that we are connected with, and here's also part of the problem, right? I mean, we gathered together in this event, but then right afterwards, we learned about this problem with Elon Musk in Brazil. I don't know if you followed this issue, but a judge in Brazil ordered the ban of X in the country for a period because X was not complying with some orders regarding disinformation, and particularly, part of the judicial process that are now going through regarding the attempt of coup from Bolsonarista kind of political forces in Brazil. And in this context, the judge asked for some of these accounts to be taken down, and Elon Musk X were refusing to do that, to obey this legal judicial order, and then the judge requested the ban. Elon Musk, fought the ban and resisted in the beginning, but then in the end accepted the conditions, paid the fines, banned the accounts, and X was reestablished in Brazil. But then at the time, it was a big, I mean, as you can imagine, it was a big issue in Latin America and particularly in Brazil. Lots of political agitation around it, particularly from the hard right, the extreme right. And then we with some of these colleagues, Cecilia and Cedric in this case, we decided to put through a support letter to the Brazilian digital sovereignty, so to speak. That is the right of a country to go forward with its own judicial space and to regulate, to proceed with a legal order regarding big tech company as the case of X. And then we draft this letter on support of Brazilian digital sovereignty, and we got the support of great scholars, academics, intellectuals from all over the world, heavyweights such as Thomas Piketty, Yanis Varoufakis, Daring Acemoglu, that right afterwards won the Nobel Prize in Economics, as some of you might know, but also Shoshana Zuboff, Gabriel Zucman, Mariana Mazzucato, and many others, right? So it was a big impact, lots of media coverage, and then coming out of this initiative, we decided to, well, let's have a step further and go beyond confrontation, opposition kind of stance, and also to offer some kind of practical ideas on what we mean by digital sovereignty, right? What do we say when we say that? Because one thing is to oppose big tech interventionism, big tech monopoly, and all these political problems stemming out of it. But the other more difficult task, and that's what we invite you to do with us in terms of these debates, is to, well, have a step further and broaden our political imagination to define digital sovereignty and also some first, at least as a first step, first overall measures to concretize, to make feasible, concrete ideas on how to implement digital sovereignty in such a context. So this is what this document is about. And that's why we call it Reclaiming Digital Sovereignty Roadmap to Build. And this is really a roadmap, a kind of a very still broad and abstract to some extent, but also feasible and concrete to in another side, a roadmap to build a digital stack for the people and the planet. We think it's really important to highlight this people in the planet dimension when it comes to debate digital sovereignty, right? Because it's quite, well, I don't want to say it's quite easy, but it's a big risk of these debates on digital sovereignty to slide to chauvinism and a sort of nationalism that is not progressive and productive in terms of the transformations we want to see materialize, we want to see happen here. But before I get into some of these proposals we are trying to do here. Of course, this is a public document. It's out there in the web. We can send you later on, but you can easily find it in Google or whatever. I mean, quite ironic I'm mentioning Google here, but anyway, you can find it out there in the internet by just typing it. I think it's more detailed document. We have some, like, say, 15 pages or so detailing some of these proposals and refining it and unpacking it. So what I will do here is just to give you an overall of the main, let's say, executive summary of the whole thing. And of course, we can discuss more later on. But it's important also to give a background context here. And what we call against the digital sovereignty for the people and the planet, the dependency. There is a long debate in Latin American intellectual tradition on dependency theories, and so on. I don't want to get into that, but just to highlight how serious is the situation at this point, particularly, I mean, we are now in Europe, but of course we can apply this to other places, other countries in the global south and beyond. And here you have some interesting, to say least, numbers. So Amazon, Google, and Microsoft alone control 70% of the global cloud market. It's a very concentrated monopoly. And basically everything we do in terms of digital services is growingly, right, more and more going through clouds. I mean, when you apply artificial intelligence, when you have software systems organizing your university files and so on and so forth, this is all cloud-based services controlled mostly by these companies, and you can easily easily think of many examples where if you're not relying on Google, you're relying on Microsoft or Amazon to have these services, right? So this leads us to a scenario where there is a strong control over data infrastructure, also beyond what we call it, because the cloud as you know, it's connected to a huge physical material infrastructure, and over half of the world's undersea cables are owned also by the big techs at this point. And we don't have European, Global South, and other countries' alternatives providers, leading to a huge dependency in this environment. And as you can see now with the Trump administration and their alignment with these new political forces and the current US administration and beyond, this is quite problematic for many reasons, beyond economic ones, but also political, social political reasons why this is so sensitive. And in a sense, the scenario we have, it's a monopoly, right? Where countries lack, again, I can mention Europe, but also Global South, the ability to process its own data without relying on foreign companies, and here specifically, big techs. And this is, again, a fundamental issue because growing aspects of our life are more and more governed by digital processes controlled by these companies. And this also brings, as you saw with Thea's presentation, a huge problem in terms of environmental and ecological problems, because these are the companies planning our so-called green digital transition. These are the companies that we are relying on to provide digital services, digital solutions, technologies for what we have ideologically, I would say, called a green digital transition. And we are not taking these issues into consideration, and they're backfiring because these companies, of course, don't have the best ecological interest when it comes to plan their businesses. They're most, as we know, focused on profit motive. And here we have, again, data centers with massive ecological footprint, digital infrastructure, although they're trying to pivot and sell it to government as a way out for the environmental problems. In fact, this is deepening the problems because we rely on more energy use, more water use, and resources overall, rare minerals, as you know. So the problem is over-reliance on these companies also deprive us of planning politically, economically, our way out of the ecological crisis we are within at this point. All right. So what we are trying to offer here is then a way to tackle the problem through shared public digital infrastructure, where ones we can politically, economically, and socially control as a people in cooperative terms, oriented to commons collective socialized solutions overall. And this is really important because to this point, to the point we are now, most of the time we are dealing with these problems with isolated solutions, right? We are not taking the systemic approach to understand first the problem and then to address it. And what we try to do here, having one step further beyond the critique that is badly needed, of course, and we spend most of our time as academics, intellectuals in the critical field, providing these as said, much needed critiques, but we think in these drastic times, we need to maybe try to have a step further and try to imagine to draw of some kind of solutions, at least preliminary ones. And here's what we are trying to do. First, to offer a systemic understanding of this, and also in terms of the proposals to be offered, going through the systemic approach. So there is a clearly an interdependence of the different digital layers, infrastructure, software, AI, and the governance of the systems, and to think and solutions isolated solutions will not solve the problem. The dependencies that I've mentioned will stay there, and that's why these partial solutions tend to be well, not enough, because they cannot challenge a global, interconnected, global world dominance of these companies. We are locked in these big tech standards, their practices, their technologies, and by that they dictate the norms, and they influence the national strategies. And without a global debate and systemic actions, at least at this level, we cannot address the problem. And we badly need a public, non-profit, global connected problem to the infrastructural dependencies big tech is putting upon us. So that's what we are developing here, a democratic, popular, state-backed digital stack is essential for a social, political, economic autonomy in this domain. And here you have a summary, and I would like to conclude with that, not to take longer of your time, with our, I would say, basic proposals. This is a summary, as I said, and the objective coming from the context I gave and these mobilizations I've mentioned to broaden our political imagination, to shift the public debate, and to move a bit from critique to systemic level proposals. And here we discuss the need of to understand digital infrastructure as a service provided by nonprofit and democratic international consortia. Again, all these backing up a public-led digital stack, including these aspects that I mentioned, universal platforms such as search engines, foundational AI models that should be a commons, covered by new public institutions with state and civil society representation, a public idea such as a public marketplace where companies can offer their computing services without lock-ins of these big techs, and also to assure demand, we can go forward with the states procuring from this marketplace and ending some contracts with big techs. So the main idea here with this first proposals, for example, is to address this infrastructural problem, go beyond the market solutions, offer and think about social, public capacities to provide some of these common good oriented, so to speak, digital infrastructure, and address the regulation in a different manner. Because most of the approach we have been trying so far, it's about regulating. But this is not enough, as we can see. This is not and not enough to tackle the systemic infrastructural domain this company have acquired, not only to the basic socioeconomic digital services and infrastructure, but also to the political debate that we can see is at this point colonized by this through these dominants. And importantly, it's also necessary to craft a research agenda focused on these digital developments that are not driven by the constant hype, the constant pressures of this technological solutionism that these companies are putting upon us all the time, including the agenda of the green digital transition. Sometimes some technologies are just not necessary, and we don't need to go further with them just because these companies are constantly preaching us of these new technological solutions all the time. And for this, a kind of agenda that would require considering, of course, ethical, ecological, political impacts of these technologies. And again, an agenda inspired by addressing these social salient problems and challenges in an interconnected, holistic, interdisciplinary, and non-profit dominated, non-profit oriented manner. And for this, we need to reclaim public knowledge networks led by new public international, let's say we are suggesting here a new public international research agency and region or even regional agencies in different continents to counterbalance these growing concentration of private and closed science that we have now. We call for non-aligned technologies movement. This is part of the initiative that is out there for a long time now, and we join as an important thing to underpin an ecological internationalism approach to the digital sovereignty, grounding digital sovereignty in this ecological internationalism that rejects seeing sovereignty as a battlefield just among countries, as I was saying in the beginning, and think this from the standpoint of planet and the people addressing ecological issues on one side and labor and well-being kind of aspects on the of people in the other on the other side, and also to establish strict mechanism and all levels possible to dismantle existing and prevent potential forms of state surveillance and misappropriation of collective solutions by specific governments. And we think that this international connected manner of dealing with it is also part of the solution for these specific problems. So therefore, multilateral agreements on principle rules for the internet are indispensable for building these autonomous and democratically governed institutions and solutions. And finally, to make this happen, to make it possible, it's important to follow some principles and actions such as prevent choke points and panopticon power in the digital space, forbidding mergers and acquisitions, corporate venture capital, and strategic alliances among complementary firms, as we have had so far. Regulators also, of course, there is an important role for regulation here, although regulation alone cannot solve the problem, and regulators must limit these companies' indiscriminate concentration of social knowledge. These are public, the social knowledge is mostly and principally public goods that are being appropriated by these companies freely, and this is a matter of great concern for societies, and we should tackle it accordingly. Of course, it's a common sense, basic understanding that we need to tax this company. This is self-explanatory. We need to tax these large digital corporations to simultaneously regulate their action and fund all these alternative measures and actions, expanding democratic digital sovereignty. And as I said, recognize while doing all this that not every technology is desirable, right? Technologies, for example, that replace labor without offering any meaningful alternatives, and those that expand surveillance, control, particularly of labor, should be strictly forbidden. And this policy frameworks that we put here is directed to protective labor and civil and human rights. And for this, states, societies collectively should step in to offer also training, capacity, employment for development and operation of this public-led digital stack. So this is it. I mean, this is a very broad overall a presentation of some of these principles and ideas. Of course, this needs more development and concrete specifications, data, but this is also an invitation for you to be part of this initiative, this a coalition that we are putting through to develop further these ideas, to disseminate these ideas in the public debate, and to shift the conversations around the problems we have with the current digital economy in a positive, productive manner. Of course, there is a long path to make it happen, but we do think this is a good starting point for mobilizing and agitating around these ideas, and to provide, new imagination for our digitalized economies and societies. And turns out the repercussion of these ideas so far have been great, have been, better than we expected when we crafted this document. We presented this 2 times to different groups of the European Parliament. We are now discussing with members of Latin American governments to see to what extent we can advance further this agenda in terms of policy making, new regulations, laws, and also direct government intervention. There is a case for a new kind of green, democratic, people-governed industrial policy to rethink our economic approach to the digital environment. So there is a long avenue, a big avenue here for us to explore on terms of these ideas and how we can implement and make it concrete. So yeah, so this is, again, as I said, is mostly an invitation. I hope you have enjoyed, and we are here to discuss this further and also answer questions about all these basic ideas we have offered so far. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. Yeah, this is it.
All right, awesome. Great stuff over there. We first had, setting up some of the problems and the issues. And then we have some ways and pathways forward to potential solutions or improvements. I'm loving this. I'm loving this duo right here. And really, hearing presentations that are recognizing the digital as deepening the environmental or climate problems. Oh, I do not hear this enough. And I just got to comment, it's just really shameful how you're hearing the opposite as a kind of a dominant conversation in energy studies and within different sustainability institutes. It's truly shameful. So I say that to say thank you, amazing. And you're pointing out something that is really important and for some odd reason underestimated. And I'm really excited to hear more about these solutions, and very excited about this special issue on globalizations. Can you tell everyone when and how you approximately think this will be out?
Well, the idea is that the issue, it's with globalizations, as you said, as we said, and it's as you know, it always depends on our voluntary reviewers, and we are all dumped with lots of work, but so it's difficult to have a firm, clear say exactly when it's coming out. But we are working with the prospect of having it published, let's say July, August at latest, 1 year after the events we did. And I must say, we are progressing quite fast. I'm somewhat confident that we will make it, let's say, if not in August, as we are planning, by the end of the year at latest. So, yeah.
All right, this fall. I'm looking forward to it. All right, so before we open this up for questions, and there should be a lot, I want to pick on good old Christopher Chagnon over there. Yeah, I know you're back there, who I know has had a big hand in looking at digital technologies and extractivism. And also, yeah, clarification on my point is that I really do associate anything digital with extractivism, and hence my maybe misrepresenting the presentation a little bit. But it was my way to really kind of stress the connection also with the EXALT initiative as well, and that I really, if you say digital, the supply chains, as we heard in both these presentations, are enormous. But okay, moving on. Dr. Chagnon, what are you thinking?
Not doctor yet, but hopefully eventually, before too long. It's thank you so much, Ed and Thea. I was I was fortunate to participate in the uh, summer school and workshop last year, and I have to say, bit bias, it was probably my favorite academic event that I've been to over the course of my doctorate. I'm used to going to like more extractivism stuff where I'm the weirdo who's focusing on technology, or going to technology stuff which is super like orthodox, tech will solve everything, and I'm the weirdo who's being critical. So it was just such a nice feeling, like, oh my goodness, a bunch of people who are talking about stuff that I'm really into, and we're all kind of coming from the same angle. So I just want to say thank you for that, and thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Um, I I've been recently kind of reading through the book by Schwab, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, as part of my sort of, setting up what the orthodox view is. And I can tell you, it's been a long time since any sort of work has pissed me off, like reading through that book. I mean, the dude basically says there's only two problems that he foresees happening. One of them is that, very fair, uh, there's so much change and stuff, like the ability to govern it is very difficult. Totally agree. He says the second biggest problem is basically that not everyone is just saying that this is friggin' awesome and just focusing on the positives. And he just sort of starts talking about how we just need to focus on the positive stuff because, people won't see negative impacts in their lives or the environment if nobody's talking about it. But yeah, just really, really loving this. I love the approach of putting this forward with the practice oriented in the international engagement. I think, because this is such a difficult thing of how do we govern these things? How do we take the action against these companies that are suddenly the biggest in the world, some of the most powerful in the world? And of course, with my own work, looking at what I call social pollution and how these aspects of universalism can cause social damages in cultures in the global south. But I do like that, even like, I was a little bit like, universal platforms, but then I was like, all right, if you look at the whole context, you're not saying just one single culture controlling everything. It's a decentralized, places could have their own approaches and their own melds on things. I think that's brilliant. I think that's beautiful. I could go on and on and on for ages, but I think that this is absolutely fantastic. I think that, you know, we need to have these discussions more. We need to be having people realize that, like, the new iPhone, the new this, the new that, the shortening life cycles, the inability to repair are driving very much the constant environmental destruction, as well as the social destruction that's coming with it, with the addiction and, as I said, like, social harms, especially in the global south, and so on and so forth. So yeah, not to take too much time from the discussion, but yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, excellent. And Chris, I hope you chime in throughout the discussion later on. But so how this will proceed is that please, anyone, any of the 30 participants that are here, either please chime in, show your face, and ask a question, or if you are more timid, feel free to write it into the chat, and I will do my best to read it out loud. And so, yeah, please step up, raise your hand, and ask a question. Otherwise, I have tons. Wow. I will not accept this.
Well, I do have one question. I'm Ruben. Yeah.
Oh, look at this, Ruben from the outfield.
Hello. Yeah. Thanks a lot for the presentation, Fia, and the means that was definitely brilliant, and I echo what has been said by Chris and Xander already. But just to play a bit the advocate's devil here, I was kind of wondering, why is it that there is so often this reference to the twin digital and green transition? Like, what makes them twin exactly? What I mean with this is that if it is clear that on the, let's say, extraction side of the equation, there is definitely a systemic link between the way digital exploitation and environmental exploitation work. So destruction or extraction, you choose your kind of analytical framework. I was wondering, like, why is it that also the transition is somewhat coupled in most discourses, not only like in policy discourses, or maybe precisely in policy discourses, and then academia so kind of easily copies that type of a framework. But again, I'm wondering, like, is just a contingent situation? So, for example, in Europe, for the way macroeconomic frameworks work, the digital transition and the environmental transition or green transition are kind of coupled? Or is it a more essential attribute, a more kind of real attribute that makes them one instead of two? Or again, to play a bit the advocate's level here, is it just a way to kind of frame a certain research agenda? So it's a bit of a convenient framing that we use to kind of make them twin. And in doing so, aren't we maybe losing the specificity of the digital transition on the one hand and the green transition on the other one? But again, I would like to hear more on some pushbacks on these questions, if you have any, either Tia or Edemilson or anybody else in this chat.
Sure. Yeah, I can react. Is it fine, Xander, Chris? Can I just jump in? Yeah?
Yeah, please
Okay.
do. Let's have a real dialogue and conversation here. No need
Amazing.
to have me mediate it completely.
That's cool. All right. So thank you, Ruben, for great to see you here. Thanks for the, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is a great question. And what we are trying to do here as critical scholars is to pick up on the dominant discourses and say, look, there is another side for this. This is, I mean, to long story short, to put it simply, it's about that. The so-called twin transition is precisely the way Europe is framing the problem. Is the way not only Europe, but till very recently, not to say until now, the U.S. and other major powers were somewhat presenting the issue, and not for and for quite some time now. I would say, if you go back to these Fourth Industrial Revolution, it's a document from 2016. It was somewhat picking with the idea that with this leap in AI, in datafication overall, in digitalization, we will solve all the problems. And here you have a two-sided kind of dimension for this problem. In one side, these major powers are trying to cope with the economic change overall and the competition, so the global capitalism, the transformations within global capitalism, and the new places, new actors are assuming in this, so to speak, shifting global division of labor overall in terms of the advancement of digital systems, digital products, digital solutions, and so on. And Europe is trying to, well, have a place in the table and say, look, we are also pushing forward this direction. And for a long time now, in this key of the digital solutionism, the idea is that this will at the same time benefit the economy and also tackle the environmental problem, right? And these dominant discussions are not taking into account these self, or let's say this circuits of feedback loops in terms of deepening the problem, in fact, in both directions. So we are just taking up this and say, look, we need to address this critically. We need to deconstruct these discourses. We need to provide an alternative view, and we need to go forward with alternative proposals. So it's a matter of being, as we said, confrontative in one side. I mean, offering a counter narrative in a sense, but also going beyond and say, look, if you really mean what you say in terms of a digital transition, well, here's a democratic, popular, inclusive, and planetary, conscient of the problems of the planet kind of solution. So it's a way of, in the battle of ideas, so to speak, and the political side of it, to have a stance and provide some intervention as critical scholars. So, of course, there is a bunch of problems with this framing. And the objective of the summer school we did, the workshop, and also the special issue now is to precisely to demonstrate these problems with this framing and say, look, this framing is not enough. And that's why we need to move beyond.
Excellent. Thea, do you have anything to say to that by chance?
Yes, sorry. I agree with what Ed was saying, and my understanding of this is also that it is a real discourse and it is a real framing. And our colleague Rodrigo, who has been studying policies from the EU, and he has identified, the term of twin transition from these policy documents. So in that sense, I think it's not just academic discourse that we created for the convenience of creating a research agenda, but it reflects the actual reality. And this is we can say it's like an ideological approach from the point of view of the EU to justify its broadly speaking political economic policies, but it's also a strategic approach that reflects the urgent needs to address ecological crisis, but also to strengthen its economic competitiveness in the global economy. And I also want to just add on what Ed was saying. To use this term does not necessarily mean to kind of to promote it or to agree, precisely through these kind of policy debates and creating new policy imaginations. It's to question this framing and to ask if this is the best approach to through the framing of digital twin transition. Is this the best approach to create the future that's ecological, sustainable, and democratic?
Excellent. Oh, the dilemma of power. By even using the term, you give it life in the same way that if you cite people you hate, you give them numbers on Google Scholar. The dilemma. But I think there's a little bit of a feature that was touched on that maybe missed from, I think, the more challenging aspect of Ruben's question. And that, like, where did this come from? And I think it's pretty safe to say this comes from nuclear physicists who coined the idea of green transition, or not green transition, energy transition, which then morphed into ideas of sustainable development. And I think it's that genealogy that kind of leads us to this twin division here that has been thoroughly dissected. And again, I give a lot of hate to what I hate, and I give a lot of love to what I love. But Jean-Baptiste Prézot's book, just translated from France, is More and More and More, the all-consuming history of energy, is an amazing 200-page book showing how stupid that term energy transition is. And I would argue by consequence, it's little brothers and sisters that plague us today, and which was deconstructed again greatly this afternoon. All right, who's got some more for us? So timid, so quiet. This is a great presentation. There's so many amazing, cool things to talk about in here, and no one's flying out of their seat right now. Come on.
A hand is raising.
Oh, excellent. Please just put your video on and lay it on us.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Student of computer science here, Vikke. I was thinking like this sounds really, really interesting and really great presentation. Thanks for that. But I was also thinking like, how much are you working with the technologists? Do you have like connections, or is there any groups of like open source collectives or some foundations or Linux or these kind of people working there? Because I would be really interested in this kind of combination of these. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky. In this democratic and ecological digital sovereignty coalition that started again from this letter we signed together against, in support, better saying, of Brazil digital sovereignty, and then evolved in a kind of space for debating some new ideas again. All the ideas that we created and organized and we presenting this document was coming from these amazing people that eventually signed also the document. You can find some names and institutions in the end of the document that are part of it. Maybe you can recognize some. And partially, you have also some people that with more technical background that for years have worked with digital commons, open software, open knowledge initiatives overall, and so on. So yeah, we are discussing this as part of the group, and beyond that, maybe not so in the same way, but more to the professional side. Our research group it's part of a technical university, a technological university, as you know. I mean, I don't know how much you know about LUT University, but this is social science here is rather new, and we just started as a department, and we are surrounded by engineers all around. So yeah, we've been discussing some of the issues with them and trying to, well, get some inputs, but also at the same time, I must say, well, bring them this need of broaden the social technical and technical political, better saying, imagination here, because, well, as you know, as someone working in the technical field, if I got it right, this is very much a field governed by these the relationships they have with these companies, right? So there is a lot of stake, and it's not exactly straightforward to get along in these kind of conversations, because lots of these initiatives that we had, let's say in the 90s and 2000s, I know for a fact, for example, the country I come from, I'm Brazilian, as I said, we had a huge and very active free software movement, and it was to a great extent co-opted by the techno solutionism coming from these companies. They hired a lot of these people. They eventually joined these companies. It's a difficult kind of situation. But in a more positive note, I would say that we have great capacities, technical knowledge to move ahead with these proposals, and lots of great minds are keen to collaborate and to be part of it. So I'm very optimistic in terms of these interactions also.
All right. Excellent. Good question. Thanks for stepping forward. Appreciate it. What do we got? We have some more hand. Excellent. Please put on your camera and lay it on us.
Yes, hi. My name is Mariana. I'm a professor at Hunter College and Graduate Center in New York. I'm a geographer. So thank you so much. Those were really very, very interesting presentations and conversations. So I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little more on that division of labor within this green digital transition between global north and global south, how it is shaping, and I believe it's developing very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we have, this varies a lot depending on the country, right? I mean, if you, let's say, address India or Brazil or the others, but overall speaking, when it comes to think about the digital capacities and how these translate to the so-called energy transition and environmental solutions, what we are trying to highlight with this document and these initiatives is that we have a kind of, let's say, overall ladder or a chain, you name it, where these companies, through exerting control beyond ownership, in a sense, they have the power to coordinate the whole industry and the whole and the overall initiatives in this field. So this is what we are trying to tackle here: how we can break this dominance of a few a small group of companies and actors to govern our futures and to decide upon what is priority in terms of addressing energy issues and environmental problems. And turns out to this day, these are mostly a global north controlled agenda and initiatives directed by global north companies. And again, the global south contribute mostly with, and in the case of the digital ecosystems, for example, with cheap labor, with raw materials, and well, lots of other kind of resources to this global economy. When it also comes to the fact of these minerals, the materials overall, so there is a clear, let's say, entrenchment of the old global south, global north division in terms of power and economic domination. And these are, well, far from being less than being entrenched in this new situation. And this should be more part of the public conversations around it in terms of the diagnostics, but also in terms of the proposals we offer. And that's why we think it's so important to think in as the model, so to speak, of the people and the planet, to think it planetarily in a planetary scale, in a systemic manner, because otherwise, if you have only a European solution or whatever, we cannot deal properly with the problem, and we will again reinforce the injustices, inequalities, and the structural divisions that are part of the global economy, and again be entrenched with this new order. So, yeah, so this would, I don't know if you answer exactly your question you asked just for developing further, but I don't know if it was exactly what you're asking.
That's very useful. Thank you. I'm wondering if transformation at the scale can occur without changing ownership, because you also kind of mentioned that ownership is kind of the first thing, and now it's spinning beyond it. So are there any ideas how that can be transformed? Because you also talked about commons and all this other good things, right? So what about ownership? What do you think?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, we are totally agreement, I guess, if I'm getting you right, on the need of, for example, breaking monopolies. I mean, this is a badly needed kind of action that we need to take it seriously. Globally and nationally on the different contexts. And we did it before in the past. It's interesting how most of the times we have this kind of exceptionalism when it comes to the digital economy, right? We tend to think that because it's digital, because it's somewhat as so-called immaterial aspect, but we know it's not like that. It's pretty much material and it's based on labor, and it's based on environmental resources and so on. And we have lots of mechanisms to govern socially, govern these issues. And we need to, well, get over this digital exceptionalism to think, well, rules also apply to the digital realm in terms of antitrust, monopolies, control, concentration, taxation, regulation, and so on. And when it comes to see what is happening, for example, with the U.S. and the new, well, alignment, I don't think to what extent it's exactly new, but let's take this to another moment. This alignment between big tech and Trump, it's also about the, so to speak, well, because they're feeling threatened because countries, people, they are discussing the need of changing the current state of affairs. And if you go back to Zuckerberg recent discourse when he was making public his new alignment with Trump administration, he clearly directly mentions Latin America some Latin American countries that are trying to do this and that, and all this regulation. Of course, they will frame it as a free speech kind of issue, but it's an economic issue. They're doing that because on their economic interest. They are afraid of being regulated, or of being taxed, of being whatever, right? I mean, on their for example, in the case of Facebook, they acquired Instagram and they acquired WhatsApp. I mean, by any kind of reasonable antitrust regulations, they would not be allowed, right? So if we have a reasonable approach to control ownership, monopolies, and so on, well, things will change. Things will change. And that's what they're trying to avoid. And they do see that we have lots of tensions, difficulties, and problems to make it happen. But we also have great opportunities with this conjuncture, I guess. And it's more kind of a bet than I guess. But anyway, I think we can make it happen. Again, we have capacities, we have knowledge, we have the historical common sense knowledge with us. So, and we have good proposals. We have lots of resources to make it happen. And that's why also, Mariana, this is a more kind of, I would say, sensitive issue in terms of the progressive imaginaries. We think that state still has a role to play. I mean, to what extent? It's a long, difficult debate. We know the problems of the state action in any dimension of social life, the risks, and the bad sides and the problematic sides of it. But in terms of scale, economic and technical capacity, action capacity of managing and moving resources and so on, when it comes to deal with global companies, transnational companies like this, I think democratically, participatorily, and collectively should take upon states as also a tool to deal with this situation. I know this is controversial in many environments, but we have, this is our view on this.
Yeah, thank you so much. My own recent work is on what we call...
We should probably, as much as I like the exchange between y'all, and it's actually an example of what I really like about this, we only have about 6 minutes, and I would love to actually open it up to someone else, even myself, if no one talks. But more importantly, please, someone, if there's any more questions, now is the time for this lovely and thoughtful presentations.
As people think over if they want to step in or not, just say Mariana and you, Xander, and all of you here. Of course, we are more than welcome to and more than open to get any messages, emails, contacts. So anytime you just write us, and it will be a pleasure to continue this conversation in other formats.
That's great. But please, someone else, step forward, or again, if you are more timid, you're more than welcome to, or want to remain anonymous, that's maybe a better way to say it, please write a question in the chat. All right.
Maybe a quick question. Anyways, I'm wondering, you're explaining these tensions that come up between the public or several publics and the private. And it's very interesting to me that even in the way that you narrated this contention in Brazil, it was very personalized between, the judge, Alexandre de Moraes, and Elon Musk. I guess I'm wondering, what does it mean to think about like these broad things like the regulation of the tech sector, a response from a sovereign country through these very personalistic framings? And how would that play out in thinking through this idea of digital sovereignty? Thank you.
Wow, it's a great question. And it's really difficult to answer, to be honest, Ricardo. I mean, you're following the same as me, as I think, the Brazilian situation, and it's a kind of a pattern that also repeats itself elsewhere in other places, right? I mean, personalizing the whole conversation, it's part of, the way I see, as part of a power mechanism that favors the current power structures, and people sitting in the power places are profiting of these polarized, personalized, and also disqualified, so to speak, in a sense, terribly bad kind of public debates. And what we are trying to do here with this initiative, with this document, with this event, with this everything we just presented here, is to shift the conversation to a different direction and say, look, there is a systemic aspect here. This is an infrastructural approach to be considered. These are infrastructural problems. This deals with different aspects of social life, with different parts of the world. And these are seriously enough not to be taken into account, not only as a case of Mark Zuckerberg doing that or Elon Musk doing that. I mean, it's about to think over this as social structural problems that to be understood as such. So this is the overall framing of the document and what we are trying to do. Turns out it's very difficult to, well, to have a place in the public debate when you're having not so savory kind of a personalized whatever kind of approach to these stories. But yeah, we are trying our best, and I hope you join this initiative also.
And since we're running out of time, Thea, Jan, would you is there anything you'd like to chime in on that's been talked about in some of these questions? Is there anything burning in you that you want to raise?
Yes, I would like to add on to a few things. About the division of labor, I think it's true that globally speaking, there is a similar pattern of the global division of labor compared with, let's say, during industrial manufacturing. And this is another sector of the global division of labor. But I do think that to say, in the global south, that is the main paradigm is not exactly accurate. As I'm from China, I do think that if we look at China as the case of technology and in digital economy, it does not, it stands out a bit in that it differs from many other global south countries. And I think this is largely because China has a technological sovereignty and knowledge sovereignty. And in terms of the division of labor, there is an internal division of labor too. Certain areas would focus on the high value added aspect of AI production, and the more inland and lower tier cities will have people doing things like data work. But this kind of hierarchy is not exported to the global scale as with other Western tech companies. And I think maybe with also something related to ownership and regulation and sovereignty in general, my impression is that I think if countries and EU want to develop their own sovereignty, there will be a phase of pain, let's put it that way, because looking at the case of China, the reason why Google, for example, and Facebook was not allowed in China precisely because they refused to follow specific rules and regulations within China. But what it also opened for was opportunities to develop our own technologies. And I think this is maybe a certain kind of choice that countries will have to make, in the sense that, yes, true, we are in this globalized economy, and it will create a lot of pain and a lot of damage, economic problems to be cut off in certain aspects with a global economy. But I think, on the other hand, if countries really need to be sovereign, there needs to be a strong standpoint from the position of the state to encourage internal technological development, knowledge accumulation. And this is not taken for granted, because this takes a lot of time, takes many generations. Also, education is required, research is required. So I think this might be something to think about, when certain countries want to become more sovereign, but we are living in the overall structure of, I would say, imperialism, including technological imperialism. What are the strategies that certain countries can take, and what kind of risks, or let's say consequence that we should bear for the short term, and in order to allow for a long-term gain.
Excellent. All right. That's a heavy one. So we're about over time by a minute. We're gonna have to wrap this up, but overall, amazing presentation, and for the kind of the conversation going on here, I don't think it should be lost on anyone when it's called the non-aligned technologies movement with a reference to the non-alignment movement back in the 50s and 60s with Yugoslavia and many other countries in Africa, and I believe it, and elsewhere. And I think it would be really important for people to actually understand what happened, what type of subversion, what type of politics, geopolitics, and failures that happened internally in many of those countries and externally that kind of led to this conversation happening now in an even more complicated and intensified way through technology. But there's so much to be had, an amazing conversation. Thanks everyone for showing up today. We look forward to this special issue on globalizations, and let's see if there's going to be another EXALT dialogue. And until then, take care. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks for the great presentations today. Thea and Ed,
Bye,
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you for making to it and for the questions. It was a great discussion.